Hello and welcome to another episode of Taylor Talks Comics. And today we're going to be talking about Alien, A Tale of Two Origins. Stay tuned. And we're back. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And look in the back catalog. I have nearly 200 videos for you guys to look at, showing off all kinds of comic books and graphic novels that I love. So today, we're going to talk about Alien, A Tale of Two Origins. It's kind of a video idea I had where it's going to show off two different versions of a origin story. And I guess this is possibly the first of it on the channel. But also it's a way for me to show off these two books. Alien is a franchise that I absolutely adore. It's one of my favorite horror franchises, sci-fi franchises. It's what I think is the epitome of the subgenre of both, the mashup of both sci-fi horror. And one of the things that has drawn me more to the franchise is its comics. I love Alien comics. I think they're some of my favorite horror comics. So this month, while I'm showing off all these horror comics, one every day, you'll see, this won't be the only time you see Alien. Actually, I don't even know what order I'm releasing these videos in, so you might have already seen some Alien movies or Alien comics in this month, but I digress. This is the faithful film adaptation by Archie Goodwin and Walt Simonson. This came out around the time that the first movie was released. This is the original screenplay. So this was released a couple years ago. I think actually it might be 2019. Let me see. 2020 is when this was released. And it's based off the original script by Dan O'Bannon. So Dan O'Bannon was the first person to write a screenplay for the Alien movie. And then when when Fox took it over as a studio, they had some rewrites and some things that changed. So this is just based purely on the original screenplay, including the original xenomorph designs by H.R. Giger. They've changed the xenomorph design for the movie, so they kept it closer to what H.R. Giger did for this comic book that came out in 2020. So first, let's do this one first. Actually, sorry, I don't know what order I want to do this in. I'll say the best for last. So this came out, like I said, in 2020. It was actually, I think, the last Dark Horse release of an Aliens comic before Marvel took the license back. So you can see it's 20th Century Fox uncovered. This is a standard size hardcover. It's by Dark Horse over here. And then on the back, you get this. And you open it up. And there's the credits there. So we got the screenplay by Dan O'Bannon, adaptation script by Cristiano Sisix. Sorry if I'm butchering that name. And the art by Guilherme Balbi. Colors by Candace Hahn. Lettering by Michael Hessler. It says additional art by Walt Simonson with Dave Stewart. I'm not actually certain what that entails in here, because I didn't really notice anything in particular, but if you do know, let me know in the comments. So we get the Loving the Alien. This is a foreword by Randy Stradley, and we dive into the story. So you can see right here, here's like the front cover of issue 1. All the other covers are in the back, I believe. Yeah, all the other covers are kept for the back. So you're just reading it as a full graphic novel, no breaks or anything like that. I think this was released previously in 4 single issues. So see, the xenomorph design already looks vastly different than what we know and love of the xenomorph design that would make up the movies in the franchise for years to follow. H.R. Giger had a little bit of a different interpretation based on the script. So this is pretty faithful. Like they didn't really change a lot for the Fox, the release that we've seen now, the official release. There are something, but they did add a few things that I think made the story a lot better. One thing in particular is there is no android Ash. The Ash character apparently did not exist in the first Dan O'Bannon script. So some of the plots that are conceived there So some of the mistakes that the crew make, like letting, like when the crew goes off and then the face hugger grabs a hold of one of the crewmates, and then there's the argument between it's Sigourney Weaver's character. I'll get to that in a second, but the argument between whether or not they should let him back in or make him stay in quarantine because they don't want the rest of the crew to be infected. That whole process is different. It really is just the Sigourney Weaver character just saying, okay, just bring him in. And she even like sighs and lets him in. So some of that tension between the crew based on protocol and rules and things you miss out on. But back why I was tripping over the names of the characters, because they do change all the character names and all the character designs as well. And I'm not sure if the character names are changed, because I do know that there was a rule based on the rights issues with Dark Horse back throughout the history of Dark Horse having Aliens comics, which they had plenty. I mean, Marvel's now reprinted 4 thick omnibuses full of just the Dark Horse alien stories. So you're talking like 4,000, 5,000 pages worth of Aliens comics that Dark Horse produced over the years. And they weren't allowed to use the character names from the movies. So some of the stories that took place within that same universe, within the same canon of those movies, they had to change some of the character names. So I don't know if that's why they were changed in here, or if in the original Dan O'Bannon script, the characters had different names. Again, if you know those details, let me know in the comments. I'm very interested in that. But also the character designs. Like, this is the Sigourney Weaver character from the movie that we know. It's obviously a very different character, but then also the entire crew looks different. So this guy right here, it looks like a bald beard Viking type character. That's the main engineer character from the movie. And then some of these have like very modern type haircuts. So one of my issues with this story is that this is a 2020 comic. This comic came out in 2020, but it's done for a film adaptation that was written in the 70s for a film that came out in 1979. So having this modern comic art and style doesn't really fit with it. It kind of takes me out of what I'm looking at. I think they should have went to an artist that had a more classic looking style, maybe even used some like aged looking paper, some different, maybe not digital art, so much digital art, digital coloring, and made it look like a classic comic. Because when I get to this one, you'll see what I'm talking about with what Walt Simonson did. Now, I know that was easier because Walt Simonson was making this comic in that same era. It wasn't having to do like After Effects to make it look aged or make the colors look flatter, make the not so much digital art. But it does take you out of it. I think since you're doing a story for a screenplay that took place back then, I think it's important to not modernize things with the fashion and the hairstyles and the way the characters look. Like, this looks like a comic from 2020. Now that's a fine way to go about alien stories if you're making an alien comic in 2020 that doesn't have nothing to do with the adaptation. The reason why I'm griping about this is because who's the audience for this comic? The audience for this screenplay adaptation is someone that's a diehard Aliens fan, that's been an Aliens fan for a very long time. It's a fan of the 1979 movie. It's probably a fan of maybe even the Walt Simonson and Archie Goodwin adaptation. Not a newer modern comic book fan. But the way with the art style is done and everything, it looks like you're gearing it towards a modern comic book fan, and I just don't think that's your audience. But so I was pretty disappointed with this. It was interesting to see some of the story differences in there, and to see that the finished movie actually came out better than the original screenplay. You see the xenomorph in its full form right there, which, I mean, if you remember the movie too, back in 1979, you don't really see the xenomorphs in its full figure. They're always kept in the shadows, and it's done purposely to give it kind of that tension building kind of creature feature type action to it. So overall, this was okay. I don't think I'm ever going to probably read this again. Overall, kind of disappointed. However, if you want an Aliens comic, you want to read one Aliens comic in your life, this might be the best choice to make. So this was originally put out as a treasury-sized edition. I forget who published it back in 1980 or whatever. Does that have the indicia when it was originally printed? It says 1979. Yeah, originally published. Oh, Heavy Metal. Heavy Metal Communications in 1979. This is the Titan edition that came out in 2012. So that Heavy Metal version is pretty hard to find. It'll cost you kind of an arm and a leg to get that treasury-sized book. I do think it might be a little bit bigger than this in trim size, but this is magazine size. Like, if I can find a single issue real quick. Here's a good Halloween themed single issue. You can see it's still bigger than and wider than a normal single issue comic. But it's hard to find. So Titan reprinting this in 2012 was really great. You can see it's got a nice spine to it. Here's the back. The back on my copy is a little dusty and dirty, so ignore that. But Heavy Metal retained the rights to this. So Dark Horse never reprinted the story, and Marvel, I don't know if Marvel even has the rights to reprint the story. I don't know if it's a thing that Heavy Metal has it rights with Walt Simonson and Archie Goodwin. I have no idea how that works. If someone does, let me know. Because this was not reprinted in any of the Marvel omnibuses or anything. But this is a masterpiece of comic storytelling, comic book lettering, adapting a movie to a comic book. Like this might be one of the best movie adaptations into a comic book I've ever seen. Right away, you see the great lettering right there. And if you're a fan of the movie, you can see all the movie moments. And it's really great to see how Walt Simonson and Archie Goodwin interpreted that for comics. Even like the introductions to the characters, which you might not get in different moments in the movie. It's kind of hard to translate that to the comic books, but you see all of the great moments. And Walt Simonson is just one of the greatest comic book artists of all time, period. So entrusting him with this is just such an easy decision. So you see like this ship right here, but then like even like the border around it is done to like kind of add an atmosphere to the scene. I love this panel too with all the black around it to really show you like the claustrophobia of the spaceship, which is one of the themes of Alien that is not told outright. Is just like that claustrophobic feeling of like you're stuck on the spaceship, you have nowhere to go, and you're trapped with this monster. Here's some lettering that goes. It's like the call out signal that they're getting from the alien ship. Just absolutely amazing comics. And you even get like the back and forth dialogue between about some of the great things about the Alien movie too is the back and forth dialogue between the characters about money, about roles on the team, who's more important than who, like those kinds of things. You still get that within this comic as well. Even the use of color too, which I don't know, was the colorist credited on this? Yeah, coloring by Walt Simonson, Louis Simonson, Deborah Pedler, Paulie Law, and Bob LaRose. So it was a whole team that did it. And John Workman, I would be remiss to not include him. Lettering and design by John Workman, which I don't know the lettering he did. I don't know if he's responsible for the lettering, like this kind of lettering, or the ones that's a piece of the artwork, or if Walt Simonson did that himself. So again, like the use of scale here when they encounter the spaceship, and you can see the figures down here, so you can see how massive this is on this 2-page spread. And then when they see the first alien fossilized in this building with all the detail all over, which Walt Simonson is a big fan of Jack Kirby and his detailed technology and whatnot. So Walt Simonson does a great job here, or is a good person to do this kinds of thing. Here's the first face hugger attack, and I love the use of this. So it's like the face hugger attacks him, and it's almost off screen, and then like you see this blurriness, and it goes black, and you can hear like the inaudible call out for Kane as it even disappears, so you can't really hear all of it. Such a great use of storytelling in comics that depicts what you see on camera. Even though the cartoon language here of like the door opening is a cool little animated panel. There's the face hugger. So one thing that's hard to depict too is like when in this face hugger scene in the movie, you'll remember the I guess the tentacle on the bottom is constantly trying to is sinking around his throat like more and more. It's not really depicted in the comic here, but it's kind of a hard thing to do. Here's the acid when they cut the finger of the face hugger, and the acid drips down, and then they have to rush down to the different levels to see how far the acid drips down, so you can see them going down each level. Again, Walt Simonson with his panel layouts is amazing. And this was like, Walt Simonson was like one of the more innovative artists with panel layouts for like doing things like that. Even back to his days doing, I'm drawing a blank now, the backup strip that he did with, it was the backup strip of Batman, and there's a whole hardcover I have of it. I'm drawing a blank, I can't think of it. So let me know in the comments, you know what I'm talking about. And then here's Kane coming to, coming back to dinner here. And we know what's about to happen right now, right? If we know the Aliens movie. Kane's feeling cramps, they put him on the table, blood and guts, and then get ready for this page turn. Page turns in horror comics, since I'm doing horror comics all month, the page turn's one of the most powerful tools in comics, period. As a cartoonist, it's one of the things that only comics has as a medium that no other medium has. Because you as the reader have the power of the page turn. You know what's going to happen. When are you going to turn the page? And then you turn it into the blood and guts of the xenomorph popping out of his chest. Which might be better than the movie, this scene right here. And then you can go back and forth. You can look at it however which way you want. Or you can flip through if it's too scary. You can flip through it too fast. Or flip faster. So here's the xenomorph encountering Brett. So Brett's right here. He finds the shedded skin of the little creature that popped out of Kane's chest. So he knows the thing shed its skin, right? And you see, you can even see the xenomorph back here in an ominous, just a little tiny tight panel. So right, again, the page turn, you like, what's going on back here? Boom, xenomorph. And then he wraps his leg, and then Brett being like slowly stabbed into this animated panel, 4-panel sequence here. The lettering right there, as Brett finds his scream. This is absolutely amazing. I love this too. This is obviously a famous scene in the movie where, I forget Lambert? Yeah, Lambert is like in the control room guiding them, saying like, because they're trying to find the xenomorph now. And they have like this heat sequence, or heat tracking system. And they can see like this is them, but they can see this thing sitting closer and closer to them. Again, a great use of sequential panels by Simonson there, as the xenomorph encounters them. And then here's Ash. Here's when Ripley encounters Ash about the things that he's done differently. She notices too that the protocol is to bring the living organism back. Not necessarily humans aren't important. Just make sure the human organism's back. So Ripley encounters Ash. Ash starts beating her up. He even shoves the magazine into her throat, which this page turn isn't so much unless you've seen the movie, which most of you have. So she shoves it into the magazine down into her throat, and then the other crew members find him and stop him, blast Ash's head off, and find out he's a robot. A robot! A GD android! But then Ash is choking him without a head. And then they put Ash's head on the table, and he's still talking to him. Which this is done better in the movie, too. It's kind of hard to translate into comics, but I digress. And then you get to the conclusion of the movie with more great. There's the big explosion that happens. So yeah, this is a great piece of comics history to have. Like I said, maybe one of the best film adaptations ever. It's $14.95 was what the cover price on this copy was. So you might be able to find this in comic book shops collecting dust. And it is a thinner trade paperback, so maybe it'll look close on the shelves. I don't know if this is out of print or hard to find or anything like that. But much, much better than this output based on the original screenplay. This was based on the finished movie. And Walt Simonson, Archie Goodwin, just an absolute masterpiece of comics. I can't recommend this enough. So yeah, thanks for watching. Again, we're going every day in Spooktober, going over my favorite horror comics. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the rest of the horror comics. Go back and watch the ones you've missed maybe. And let me know in the comments how you feel about Alien comics, Alien the movies, if you've picked any of these up. I love talking to you guys in the comments about comics. And yeah, so everybody have a great day. Keep reading comics.